I'm really glad you're here. I'm glad you clicked. Thank you. I love it when you watch my videos. But I need to tell you something about this video. So this book touched me to my core. So this is not a video you can just watch and pause and whatever. It's going to be long. I'm still editing. It's 38.616 minutes. And it's probably going to be 37.16 minutes after I'm done editing, because you know I don't edit it. So just be prepared, because I had a strong reaction to this book, and this video means a lot to me. So get comfortable, get something cozy, open your app to purchase this book, and let's get started. Hello everyone. It is Njeri. It is very early-ish. I mean, it's early for a Saturday. And I just finished reading Butter, Honey, Pig Bread by Francesca Ekwuasi. And I just couldn't not talk to you about it, because I literally burst into tears after I finished it. And it was such a beautiful read, and I felt like I needed to record my first impressions, which is why I'm filming on my laptop and partying like it's 2017 and anything. So let's just get into it. This is going to be a full 7-calorie shell review, and I hope that you appreciate what I've done for you here. I hope you appreciate it, all of this, because this was deliberate and it's early. Okay. So first of all, I heard about Butter, Honey, Pig Bread because I was just browsing on the internets, and I found the Canada Reads selections for 2021, and I learned that this book was one of the finalists, which is why we have this little sticker on it saying that it's 2021 Canada Reads selection. And this year there were 2 Black authors who were shortlisted, and I think there were only 6 or 7 books in total. So I was like, wow, that's super cool. Let me find out more about this book. And so I noticed the cover. The cover is created by Brianna McCarthy, who is a Trinidadian artist and one of my favorite artists. And so I saw the cover and I was like, I know that style. Who is this? And anybody, basically, this is why I want to give a big up to cover artists, because any book that has a cover that features art by Brianna McCarthy is going to be an insta look for me. It's going to be an insta look. It might not be an insta buy, but it's going to be an insta look. So the first thing that I recognized about this book was the art on the cover. And I'm like, I know Brianna McCarthy's work. Everything that I've seen her work on, I've purchased and loved, and or haven't read yet, but purchased it, because it's just the book itself is a work of art. And then I was like, oh, I hope it's speculative. I hope that it's science fiction or fantasy. I hope that it's got some magical elements to it, because if it doesn't, I probably won't read it. So I then checked to make sure that, the author is Black, and she is. And then I read the synopsis. So first, I'll read the synopsis. So, in sensuous mythic prose, Francesca Ekwuasi's sweeping debut novel tells the interwoven stories of 3 Nigerian women, Kamberinachi and her twin daughters Kende and Taye. Believing herself to be an Obanje, a spirit that plagues a family with grief by dying repeatedly in childhood and being reborn, Kamberinachi fears the consequences of her defiant decision to stay alive. Her worst fears come true when Kende experiences a devastating childhood trauma that fractures the family in seemingly irreversible ways. Kende moves away to Montreal to heal and build a life of her own. Taye flees to London and attempts to numb her guilt and loneliness with reckless hedonism. After more than a decade apart, Taye and Kende return home to visit their mother in Lagos, where the three women must address the wounds of the past if they are to reconcile and move forward. Incandescent and evocative, Butter Honey Pig Bread is an intergenerational tale of choices and their consequences, of motherhood, of the malleable line between the spirit and the mind, of finding new homes and mending old ones, of voracious appetites, of queer love, of friendship, faith, and above all, family. So, I have to tell you this in chronological order, clearly. So, I read that and I was like, check, yes, where do I sign? How do I get a copy of this book? It was published by Arsenal Pulp Press, excuse me. And so after I read the synopsis, I was like, okay, I'm definitely getting a copy of it. Who's Francesca Ekwowski? Because she's obviously Canadian, because Canada reads, and we've got queer, we've got Nigerian. How do I not know about this person? I need to know about this person, and also we potentially need to be friends. That's basically how it happened. So then I read her bio. Francesca Ekwowski is a writer and multidisciplinary artist from Lagos, Nigeria, whose work explores themes of faith, family, queerness, consumption, loneliness, and belonging. Her writing has been published in Winter Tangerine, Brittle Paper, Transition Magazine, the Malahat Review, Visual Arts News, in Brooklyn, and Guts Magazine. Her story, Orun is Heaven, was longlisted for the 2019 Journey Prize. So then I read that and I was like, she's obviously smart, and she writes, like, she's very clear that, I don't know if she's queer, but she's very clear that she writes about queerness in Nigeria, and I'm just like, okay, cool. And then Orun is Heaven, like, I was like, there's going to be a lot of, like, Yoruba, Ifa, like, influences in her work, and I was just like, yes, I want that too. So anyway, I read Butter Honey Pig Bread over the span of a week. I believe I started like last Friday, and it's Saturday morning right now. And I decided that I wanted to read this in a hybrid manner. So I hybrid read this by reading with my eyes and also reading with my ears. And the let me see if I can get the narrator, because then I was like, let me see if Audible has this book, and if it does, like, who's narrating it and everything. So Audible did have a copy of the book, thankfully, and it was narrated by Amaka Ume. And I'm like, who's Amaka Ume? And like, I just looked at the name and I was like, I think that Amaka Ume is a Black woman, maybe continental African, I don't know. So then I consulted Google and I looked up Amaka Ume. There's a lot of work that goes into like getting a book for me, apparently. And Amaka Ume, I found out, was the first Black woman to play Hamlet at the Stratford Festival. And the Stratford Festival is a theatrical festival. It's world renowned. It comes out of Stratford, Ontario, and that's where you go to get like lots of the classic plays, and all like the whole Shakespearean repertoire. As kids, our schools would take us to the Stratford Festival, and Stratford is a very quaint town, and it's a really beautiful place to visit. And yeah, so I was like, the narrator is a Stratford, like a theater actor, a performer. Like, what is this going to be? So then I watched, because thoroughness, I read Amaka Ume's resume. So I went to the internet. I found a clip of her To Be or Not to Be soliloquy. And I watched that, and I was like, first of all, I was like, why am I watching Shakespeare? Who cares? And then I was like, I realized I'm not watching Shakespeare, I'm watching her. And she was amazing. So then I got super excited about reading this book, because I was like, the themes are like totally what I want. The author may have identities that I share, but definitely writes about themes that I want to hear about. And then the narrator is like a super talent, and I'm like, all of this is coming to, and the cover artist is somebody who I know and like whose work I know and love, and I'm just like, goddess, ancestors, it's my birthday. You orchestrated this for me. This book, like I know that the inscription says for my grandmother, my brothers, my family by blood and by choice, but I think it also says like, and for Njeri. Like, I think it might be in invisible ink, but I think that's what happened. I think this was for me. I think this entire project was for me. At least that's how I felt. So that is my origin story for like how I found out about Butter Honey Pig Bread. And let's now get into the book. So as the synopsis says, we are like, the present timeline in this story is the reunion between Taye, who is back from London, Kende, who is back from Montreal, where she lives with her husband Farouk, and they're both in Lagos visiting their mother Kambirinachi, who lives in Lagos. So the present day timeline is these three women and Farouk, right? So as you can see from the description, they have been separated for a whole decade, and all three of them have like these divided, fractured relationships with each other. So it's really, really hard for them to come back together because it's tense, right? Like, you can definitely tell between their relationship that there's kindness between these three women. And obviously, like, Kende and Taye are twins. And so there's that connection or assumed connection between them. And so it's tough, like, from a completely mundane level. You know, I certainly have the experience of being separated from family members and not speaking to them for almost a decade. So, like, I know trust me, y'all, like, there's going to be some sharing in this book because I can't talk about how much I love it without talking about, like, how much it meant to me. So I know what it's like to be separated from family for a long period of time and living your life with chosen family. For better and for worse, but living your life without your blood family present, if they were, assuming they were present to begin with. And so I know that tension. I know the feeling of like being like, are they going to disown me? Do they still love me? Were all of the beautiful moments of the past real? Will we be able to reconnect and all of that? So like, I know that tension. And Francesca, because we're on a first name basis now, Francesca totally captured that tentativeness, the layeredness of that reunion. And also the very subtle dynamics, right? Like, Kambirinachi knows her daughters. Her daughters know each other, so they pick up on these subtle things about each other, just like changes in the facial expression, tightness of the voice, hesitance, like, you know, and because the prose is so beautiful, we can see how the characters pick up on different levels of communication. We see how they hold back. We see where they take risks in trying to like reconnect and try to deal with the ghosts of the past. And of course, returning to the family home. So like the ghosts of the past are like literally right there. So that tension is really beautiful. And then we get a little bit about each person's timeline. So Kende is one of the twins. She is an artist. We learn about her going to Montreal. We learn about her going to school, and her just like experiencing Canada. We learn about her, how she meets Farouk, who she ends up marrying. So like there's all this like this interesting like Canada, right? And that's the other thing, like I was born and raised and currently live in Canada, and so there's so many references to the Canadian landscape, to Canada as a country. There's so much history in this story. So we have like I'll get to the food in a second, but there's so much history here. So I really, and having been to Montreal and loving Montreal, I just definitely got a lot of that flavor, right? So that was really amazing. And seeing Montreal through the eyes of like a Nigerian immigrant who's young, who's studying, is super interesting. And then my favorite character is Taye, so I'm going to save her for the last. Then we have Mom, Cambrai, and we learn about her as a child. So we know that she believes herself to be an Obanje. We are exposed to her as an Obanje. I accept her as an Obanje. And she just leaps off of the page. We get so much about her mental landscape, her spiritual landscape. We learn about her desires, her fears, how difficult it is for her as a child to be a child when she's so aware of all of the entities that occupy her lived experience that others can't see and can't engage with. And I just loved it. Like, I loved how she was written, especially toward the end. I love how kind and like gentle she was as a child, even though like people didn't really understand her fully, or they feared her. Her own mother fears her. And like she just had, like, she's such a beautiful character, so lonely and so inhabited and so like careful around things and vulnerable and strong and just knowing, right? So we learn about Cambrai-Nachi's childhood. We learn about her as she gets a husband, as she gets married, as she gives birth to Kaye and Kehinde and Taye. And so the timelines are obviously all over the place, right? So it's not a unidirectional, singular timeline story. So I just loved Cambrai-Nachi throughout the whole thing. And we get flavors of Cambrai-Nachi's kin, right? The other spiritual entities that she lives her life with. Then comes my favorite character. My favorite character is Taye. Taye is obviously one of the twins. She's Kehinde's sister. She is queer. She is very, very talented in the kitchen. And so when she goes, we follow her as she lives in France. She ends up in Halifax. She ends up in London. And in all of these places, she cooks things and makes beautiful food. And like, as I said in my Friday Reads video, there's so much food in this book. Like, I know that people were talking about, I think it was Priscilla from Bookie Charm who was once talking about, or maybe it was Yvette from The Book Cave, talking about like food. And it was Yvette, because like many years ago, Yvette did a review of a book, and I don't remember which one it was. Was it Sal and Gabby Break the Universe? And Yvette was talking about how like there was so much food in the story, food that she remembered and that like she eats, and there's like crumbly cheese like being referenced, and she's like, it had crumbly cheese, and like I love crumbly cheese, and like seeing yourself on the page. Yeah. So I mean, this is all Nigerian food, so I didn't see none of myself on the page, but I digress. It was just amazing. So like Taye cooks and she shows her love through food. So like there are legit, like not actual like 6 cups of this, 5 cups of that recipes like written by like that, but I'm sure that if you actually like read some of these like paragraphs where Francesca takes us through like Taye's cooking, you could I'm sure if you did the things that Taye did, you would get maybe not a reasonable facsimile of her talent, but you would actually get a like food. And like there are all these like Nigerian spices, right? Like shito and like dried ground crayfish, and like, you know, she takes us through making oh my god, I have all these different rices in my head. It's not jollof, it was like another rice, I forget. Anyway, so lots of recipes. Taye is super queer, and she has lots of lovers throughout the story, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed how much sensualness, sexualness, and romance, different kinds of sensuality, different kinds of queer intimacy that we get. And like, shout out to the queer intimacy, because it was just, it wasn't like casual queerness, because, you know, Francisca makes a point of like demonstrating that this character is a queer character, and it's difficult in a lot of different ways. But like, it was so rich. Like, I was reminded of like my own coming out and my own coming into myself as a sexual being, and my own questioning of things, right? Questioning heterosexuality, questioning monogamy, questioning Christianity, questioning like all of these things. And like, all of these themes are in this book. And we see it through Taye's character. And one of Taye's lovers, you know how when I did, I did a tag. I don't know what it was. Some tag. And one of the questions was, who's your latest book character crush or book crush? And I'm like, I'm grown. I don't crush on book characters. That's like, I don't know. That's for people who weren't born in a decade. That's not for me. It's fiction, okay? But I have my first crush. This is the first time. No, it's the second time. No, it's the first time. It's the first time, because there was a character in the Broken Earth trilogy that like showed up, we'll say. But there's a character in this book, and I was like, oh my gosh, this character is a total book crush for me. And I know why. It's because this particular character shares a lot of the qualities that like I love to see in the world, and that I'm particularly like attracted to. And it's one of the few times that I've seen a character like that show up in a book. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen that combination of qualities on the page before. And I was like, that's amazing. So amazing character, Taye was. And then, okay, I guess I should just start talking about the 7 cowrie shell system, because I might be rambling. So I've talked to you a little bit about the plot. Let me go and make sure that I have, like, I've touched on all the points. I've talked to you a little bit about the plot. And what else is there? Let's see if I can get my thing up, or do I have to go and get my reading journal? I might have to get my reading journal. That's gonna be faster. Okay, so let's just go through the 7 cowrie reading system. Okay, so world building. For the most part, this is pretty mundane, right? We're traveling to all of these different places, and through these characters' experiences. There's so much travel in this book as well, so much movement and transition. It's just beautiful. And I should say, I read a lot of this book while I was walking outside, and I walked the same route, so it was really cool to be actually traveling and discovering new streets and corners in my neighborhood while discovering the story and the characters. It's a perfect way to read it. We don't get a lot of the like other realm, right? We encounter them, but it's very much like mundane. Like, this is everyday life on the street. Montreal, Lagos, London, Halifax, right? So we get a lot of that. So a full cowrie shell for world building, given obviously what it is. And then in terms of the elements of the fantastic, there are at least 3 different kinds of like expressions of like another dimension in the book, and we see that through several characters. And I love like while I love big fantasy, big magic, like vampires and monsters and witches and ghosts and hates and shadows and demons and, you know, like whatever, like Sukiya and mermaids and witches and just all of that stuff. So while I love that and I think it's great, my actual like favorite kind of magic is light touch, subtle magic. What was that? I'm talking to somebody and their face starts to blur, but did it? I don't know. That for me, that's the thing that's like, that gets me the most, right? Like, you're talking to somebody and you know they're not being truthful with you, and you can actually hear the truth as they're speaking, as they're lying to you. You can hear the truth coming out of their mouth. Did you hear it? Did you not? Is this your imagination? Is it projection? Are you psychic? I don't know. Like, that's the kind of magic that I'm just like, ooh, I love that. That's my favorite, even though I love all different kinds of otherworldly elements. So like, oh, this book hit the spot in terms of that subtle touch. And frankly, I think that that's probably how most people experience the otherworldly in the everyday, which is like these mundane, did you see it, did you not? You know, the veil kind of shifts just a little bit, right? That's I think what most people experience if they're going to experience otherworldly things. I talked about the points of view. So in the 7 calorie shell system, the question is like, is the story told from the perspective of the person with the most marginal point of view, right? And I do not the whole story, but we do get we get several points of view. And not only do we get points of view from the 3 characters, Taye, Kende, and Kambirinachi, we get the story told from those characters at different stages in their lives. So we get the children, we get the adults, we get to a certain extent the elder, to a certain extent we get the young adult. So there are many perspectives, and there is one particular perspective that is extremely vulnerable, and we get her perspective. So I would definitely say that the points of view that are offered do give us a sense of the plot through the eyes of the person most vulnerable, and that opens up a huge richness in the story that we hope gets resolved by the end. Themes. So one of the interesting things about the way that Francesca talks about her own, like through her bio, and I guess, I don't know if she wrote the blurb, but whoever wrote the blurb, but they're always like very clear themes, like consumption, queerness, food, family, healing, right? Like the themes are right in your face. And I would say that all of them are really, really powerfully explored in the text. So the themes, and for me, like as a Black queer woman, all of those themes are so important to me, right? Like family and like healing and connection. So for me, when I told my parents that I was queer, I wasn't sure how they would react. And having grown up in a family where I received a lot of like care and attention and love, I wasn't sure that I would experience that. I wasn't sure, right? And while this isn't a story about coming out, the theme though about being estranged from family is like really rich there. So that was like one thing. And I loved that, at least for the main characters, queerness wasn't controversial, right? So that was really amazing for me and very healing for me to read. The theme of like consumption and finding ways to survive, right? Like eating food or not eating food, or like our relationship with running, right? Like diving headfirst into a passion, like all of those kinds of things as ways to help process through trauma, like so big, right? So, and like self-emancipation through exploration and discovery, that definitely happened throughout. And then characters, I've talked a lot about the characters. I'm giving a full calorie shell for every single one of these themes. The characters were stunningly written. multidimensional. I cared for all of the characters, all of them. Even when they did stupid things, I was like, really? Come on now. Just like, be honest, right? Like, just, they were beautifully flawed and so balanced. And one of the newer categories that I have in the 7 cowrie shell system is the relevance to Black queer lives. And I can say that, like, this story was so relevant to my Black queer life. Like, it was so meaningful, and the themes were so relevant. So I really appreciated that. And the reading experience, I loved it. And I have to say, like, when I finished it, I cried. And I was going to take a picture and put it on Instagram, but I didn't have any makeup on and I felt shy, so I didn't. But just pretend me crying. Pretend that you can see me crying. Like, the last line, I just closed the book and started sobbing. So I just need to say that this was a 7 cowrie shell read for me. I'm still recovering because I finished it about an hour and a half ago. It was a 7 cowrie shell read for me. And it's the best book that I've read so far this year. And this might be on my all-time list of best books I've ever read. Which feels like a big thing to say. But I'm saying it. So, like, you know, in terms of, like, being seen in a book, that's really important. It is really, really important to be seen. But it's also really important for that not to be where things end. So it's not just about having characters who do this or who are this. It's about allowing those characters to live and breathe and do all of that and dance on the page. And that's what this story did. And this artwork, having read everything, now I totally get the artwork. Like, this was an exceptional story. It was exceptional. I feel like Francesca Ekwuasi wrote this for Njeri, for me, not for you. She wrote it for me. Like, that's literally, I'm just kidding. But I feel very possessive over the story. I just, that's it. That's all I gotta say. So, I commend this. I want you to pause this video and go to an independent bookstore or go to SistahSciFi and buy a copy of this book. And I want you to read it. And then I want us all to, like, get on Zoom and cry together. That's what I want. That's all I want. That's my birthday gift. That's what I want. It's still my birth month for a few more days. This is what I want. This is an amazing book. So, okay. Companion books, other books that, like, could occupy this space. I would say that this book has, I don't know if it's far, it's over there. This book would pair well with these books would pair really well together. So if you liked fresh water, butter, honey, pig bread is, you know, something you should consider as well. And then, while this other book that I'm about to talk about, if it's close enough, and it's all the way over there, so it might not be close enough. This other book it's not like this, but after I read this other book, I was like, these three, if you could read them together, if you really want to, like, engage, read these three together. So the other book is The Summer We Got Free by Mia Mackenzie. These three books like these 3 books. These 3 books. But mostly this book right now. This book for today, this book. This book. So that's what I got to say to you in the universe today about what I'm reading. So if you have watched this video all the way to the end, how did you like Butter Honey Pig Bread? Did you love it like me? Did you feel it? Tell me what you thought. And do you want to read it now after watching this video? If so, why? What intrigues you? And if you have watched this all the way to the end, this is what I want to put, because this book was so much, so we need to put so much. So I want a bunch of things. First, we'll talk about colors. I want something green, okay? I want something green. I want something orange or coral. I want something like cream or white. And then I'd like something brown or black. So something green, something orange or coral, something white or cream, something brown, and something black. Why? Because cover. Okay? Because cover. I did it. You can do it. So that's the first thing that I want. The second thing that I'd like to hear from you is, tell me this. Answer this question. Can you tell me about like a theme that comes out of your own life experience that you would love to see beautifully depicted on the page, right? It could be like graduation. It could be, purchasing your own home. It could be writing your first thing. It could be, whatever. It could be anything. It can be big. It could be small. But what is like a really powerful moment in your own life that you would love to see beautifully rendered on the page by a talented artist? So that's the second question. And then who am I going to shout out right now? You know what? I'm not going to shout out a booktuber. I'm actually going to shout out the cover artist, the narrator, and the writer. So I'm going to leave their information in the description below. And I want to ask you, go to Brianna McCarthy's website, look at her art, and then come back and comment on it. Go to the clip of what is her name? The narrator. Go to her clip. Watch her perform the To Be or Not to Be soliloquy out of Hamlet. Come back and tell me what you think. And then explore Francesca Ekwasi. And then come back and let me know what you think. That's your homework. This is going to be a very participatory video situation. So I know that this is a long video. It's probably 40 minutes long, and even so, I could have said so much more. This is an incredible book, and I commend it to you. And that's it. Read with purpose, everyone, because I just did, and I need to go drink some water and cry. So I'll see you later.